quite a bit of a gloomy day outside, and we're just about to have something to eat. But one of the nice things about growing your own is that you can pick straight from a plant, and this container grown chilies that we've got has got 1 or 2 chilies that are looking just right for fresh picking and eating. We particularly like to get them when they're at this stage. They're not properly red, but we find they've got seeds that have developed quite well, and this particular variety, Prairie Fire, is a fantastic fresh chili for eating as a cachamoris. So I'm going to pick a few of those. This one's nice here. So we've got the chilies that we want to eat with our meal, but there are 1 or 2 other chilies that are coming along nicely. In particular, this calamoris or black chili, but they're good to leave on the plant. And you can see some of these flowers are still forming on the black chilies. Not so much so on the Prairie Fire, but what I do know is that once I've harvested a few more, it tends to encourage the plant into flowering again, and there are these buds that are forming. So it's worthwhile picking only when you need to eat them fresh, and with something like chilies, less is more anyway. We've found in recent years it's one of these sort of food items that if you pick from time to time and eat, it's more rewarding than picking quite a lot in one go and then leaving them on the kitchen table, and they start to wilt anyway, and that defeats the whole objective of eating very fresh. So I'm sure lots of you who are growing chilies are picking them fresh and eating them, and if you're growing varieties that are better for making sauce out of, then let me know if you've got any particular varieties you do that with. As I say, we don't make sauces and things like that. It's just for eating fresh. Right, in this greenhouse we've got some yellow wax beans that at various stages of ripeness, but there are 1 or 2 that are ready to be picked, such as this lovely yellow one here. And because we're not growing fields of this, what we do is we harvest when we see individual ones are ripe, and we'll probably in this case need to just freeze them, and once we've got a small handful or so, then we can add them to dishes. Obviously individual ones like this can be chopped up and added to salads and things like that, but it's important to harvest them, because if you don't, you actually stunt the development of new beans forming. If we just zoom over here with the camera, you can see exactly what I mean. So this particular one here, if it's not harvested when it reaches a stage of ripeness, such as the one I'm holding here, and it stays like that on the plant, it will hinder the growth and development of these flowering areas here, and these pods that need to be encouraged to develop. So those people who grow beans and runner beans are an example of that. Know that you should really pick them quite regularly to keep the plant keen into producing more and more pods. It's just as well the yellow, because there's a lot of leaves on here that are hiding them. So there's one here. and there's a few others that I'll be harvesting, but I just wanted to show you what they look like. Came across these a few years ago, mainly because of the colour, and I really was keen to see whether or not we could grow them, and to my surprise they grow really well here in the north of England, and superbly when we grow them in cover such as a greenhouse or a polytunnel. So if you've not grown yellow wax beans like these, give it a go. And if you're concerned about space and they're going to take up a lot of your growing space, then I would suggest growing these dwarf bush types. They're more manageable and they're easy to harvest. And in total stark contrast to the yellow wax beans, we've got these purple beans growing in the polytunnel. Again, these are a bushy dwarf variety, and these are ready for harvesting. Now, from memory, I think this is the typical purple bean that when you boil, remarkably it turns green. So once you cook it, it just looks like a regular French bean, but it's stunning when it's growing on the plant, and in particular when you see the first flowers forming on it, I think it looks stunning anyway. So again, this is another particular variety to consider growing. There's plenty more to harvest, but I'll just show you what the beans look like in my hand. I think you'll agree they actually look quite stunning. Now this is an interesting part of the polytunnel. It's the area where I'd formerly kept quite a few plants of kale, dinosaur kale, and the thing with the kale was that a few years ago we kind of really took to this particular vegetable, and we probably grew a bit too much in consecutive years, and so we wanted to take a bit of a break from it. But I'm convinced that this plant was a seedling simply from seeds that had fallen from some mature kale that I'd took a bit of time in clearing. And right next to it, you might think this is coriander, but those of you who know your herbs will probably recognise it. I think this is parsley, but it's grown into quite a substantial plant. Parsley is not particularly a herb that we use very often, but I've seen it in the shops and I have had it before. And we've sparsely used it in salads, but we just can't take to it. We just love coriander. Nevertheless, I think this is a mighty specimen of a parsley. It's a really substantial and lush parsley plant. But it won't go to waste. I'm sure we'll find some use for it. So that's pretty impressive. That small area which we cleared up that contained the parsley that I'd sown quite a few months ago, it's produced quite a substantial harvest. Now, parsley, I myself have got mixed up with parsley quite a few years ago when I was trying to pick up some coriander, and I mistakenly picked it up thinking it was coriander, and it's not. Obviously it's a different herb. This is coriander. You can see that the leaves are different, but this bunch of parsley that I've got is really healthy, so I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm not so sure we'll make too much of it. Like I said, it's not a herb that we use particularly in our cooking. I've got one cucumber plant that just about hung on, and it's now starting to climb up this trellis that I've made. You can see that there are some cucumbers forming very nicely indeed, and as we make our way up the vine there are others forming on the lateral. We're not quite there yet with consideration for harvesting, but I'm sure it's only a few days left. And as a backup, I planted some more cucumbers just in case the other one didn't make it, and these are now starting to kick on. So there's hope yet this year that we might get a decent cucumber harvest. We're just at the tail end of June, and taking a look at the kochu or eddoe leaves, we've been talking about maybe harvesting it in the next few days or so. The courgette plant has really enjoyed this wet period of rain that we've had. As with any planting of courgettes, you've got to make sure you give the plant lots of nutrients to draw on. The huge leaves tell you immediately that this is a greedy plant anyway, and provided you give it what it needs, it will provide you with quite a bit of produce. Now there's a round courgette that's very close to harvesting time for us now. It's quite densely packed, is this one, so I'm not sure all of these courgettes will develop into vegetables that are of use, but nevertheless signs are promising. My allotment runner beans are starting to develop nicely. There's a large clump of flowers here. Now, we've featured loganberry before on the allotment updates, but at the time I think we visited Roger's plot. So Ray himself grows loganberry. This is a plant with thorns on it, but as the guys have told me before, the loganberry that's got thorns on it tastes sweeter. I bet it tastes sweeter after you've pricked your finger a few times. It'll be worth the eat, I'm sure. It's gorgeous fruit. And for any of you who didn't catch that video on loganberries, I remember the guys telling me that it doesn't make it to the supermarket because it's such a delicate fruit. It bruises easily. So this is exactly the reason why you grow your own. Lots of fruit and veg, but in this case fruit that you're not going to readily get a hold of. You can grow in your back garden or on an allotment and know that this is something that you're eating that's quite unique, and not too many people are going to be eating this. And more importantly, you've grown it yourself. On an overcast evening like tonight, I think it's ideal conditions for harvesting lettuce and Ray's got on his plot a few that he's just pulled up. This is Little Gem. And this fabulous specimen is called Romaine. And he's just called me over and said, do I want one? And it'd be a shame to say no. In fact, it'd be rude to say no. Which one should I have then, Ray?
Take your pick.
Oh, lovely.
Both fresh.
Oh yeah, with soil attached to the root.
I'll take that off, you're alright.
Oh, it's okay. I'll have this one, please. So that's Romaine.
Yeah.
It won't remain here too long. Sorry about that, guys.